Hello and welcome to Who Watches the World Cup with me, Dominic Archer, and David Bryan. David, how are you doing this fine day?
I am terrific. The
Oh,
coffee is kicking
wow.
in.
That that morning coffee. Now, if I remember correctly, this is slightly off topic, but we used to live together, as listeners may know, and I seem to remember that you find it difficult to have your morning shit without a coffee. Are you having this coffee now so that when we finish recording, you can go and have your morning shit? Is that what this is about?
It oddly seems to line up perfectly. Yeah, it's
That
just something about the timing of it, and maybe the stress of of recording allows me to release once we finished.
Well, congratulations to you. I'm glad that we're making some progress for your bowels. Now,
Yeah,
on,
and hi, Mum, and sorry about that.
no, she's a big fan. I think both of our mums will really appreciate listening to conversations about you shitting. So, on a slightly more serious note, this is Who Watches the World Cup. This is a podcast that compares the results of the countries playing in Russia 2018 with the political actions going on in those countries at the time. And this is our final look at the groups, the World Cup groups. Well, today we're looking at groups G and H. Now, Group G happens to contain England, both of our home nation. And if we're talking about England, I think it's really difficult to discuss England and English culture without discussing the great poets, the great storytellers from English culture, such as the post World War One poets like Sassoon or Asquith, or even later 20th century poets like Frank Skinner and David Baddiel. And this is there's a feeling going around England these days, David. A feeling of it's coming home, it's coming home, it's coming. Football's coming home. As the great Skinner and Baddiel once said, Gareth Southgate, the whole of England is with you. That was in the lyrics for the 1998 Three Lions song, lyrics by David Baddiel and Frank Skinner. Gareth Southgate, the whole of England is with you. 20 years later, Gareth Southgate is the manager of England. David, what's happened? What has Southgate achieved for us in the last few days?
Wow, you can't really say. Sorry, you can't really say enough about what Gareth Southgate has done and how he's changed the culture. I think of the English national team. He's taken what used to be the nightmare job. There was actually a BBC documentary that came out right before the World Cup called "The Impossible Job" about England managers and the managerial role in English football. And if it is an impossible job, he's figured it out. I think. I mean, I don't want to get too ahead of myself. The first two group games have been good, and the squad looks impressive. But we do have the toughest of our group games still to come on Thursday against Belgium. But I think there's at least an expectation that we can get past the first knockout round and get to the quarterfinals, which once upon a time would have been seen as a minimum. But I think just in the realms of what we've experienced as English football fans over the last 20 years, quarterfinals is kind of seen as a success. Not only because of what we've experienced, but also because this is a young squad. That's one thing that Gareth Southgate has really changed, is he's put his faith in young players. That's something that previous managers were hesitant to do, in favour of playing all the big names, the big stars of that real peak of when the Premier League was the pinnacle of European domestic football, and the biggest English clubs were all shepherded and captained by big English players. And we had the likes of Gerrard and Lampard and Rio Ferdinand and David Beckham and all this amazing wealth of players. And it seemed like with those kind of players, how can England not be a success? And for some reason, somehow these players and no manager could ever get that gelling, could ever get that working, and could ever get England doing what really they should be doing with the players that we have. So for Gareth Southgate to come along and mix the whole thing up, taking his experience from being the under-21s manager previous to this, and his work with a lot of these players that he's now brought through to the senior squad, and allowing them to express themselves and taking the pressure off. And I think that was the big key, really, is that throughout the last 20 years, the England team couldn't breathe for media pressure and expectation, and that huge weight that we put on these young men's shoulders, that maybe thanks to the failures of years gone by, these younger players don't have to experience. They know that they're not an awful lot is expected of them, and they can go out and express themselves. Not to say that they don't have the ability to go far, because they certainly do. And with Gareth Southgate at the helm, I think he's really solidified a team spirit and a unity amongst these guys, and organised them well, got them drilled to a point where we can remain organised, remain solid, do the nitty-gritty stuff as a unit, and then allow those creative players, to the Jesse Lingards, the Rashfords, and we'd like to see Raheem Sterling do a bit more, but those exciting players to really express themselves, get goals, create chances, and put a bit of fear into the teams we come up against, which I think we did see against Tunisia, when that fear manifested as rugby in the way that Tunisia tried to deal with England. And we saw a bit of that against Panama, where things got really tetchy a bit in that first half, where they tried to incorporate that physical strategy to stop England. And I think half-time came at a good moment where it was really a danger of boiling over, and the Panama players were really losing their rags with the referee in particular. But obviously we've got Belgium to look forward to, which would be a vastly different challenge.
Yeah. Now, just looking at the current England squad, I said this to you before we started watching. I recognise maybe 5 or 6 players from the whole England squad, and from the starting 11 against Panama, I recognised 3 of the names of the players. As you were saying, this is a very young squad, a very progressive squad. We're moving, rather than looking back to days gone by, where we're looking forward. This isn't Australia, where we're pulling up, we're pulling up 38-year-old stars of yesteryear. This is very much a case of looking forward. But you were saying that means that there is less of a pressure on these players. I think there is an element of that is true. But Harry Kane is our captain. Harry Kane now for 2 years, 3 years, maybe even 4 years, has been seen as a star of the Premier League, playing for Spurs. But then Raheem Sterling, as you were saying before, we want to see more from Raheem Sterling. He's got 40 caps. He's only scored 2 goals in those 40 caps for England. But the guy is 23 years old, right?
Yeah, I mean,
he's 23 years old with 40 caps, and very recently he was just in the news a few weeks ago because he had a tattoo. Was it of an AK-47 or something?
Some kind of automatic weapon. I don't know what it was.
There are conversations based around whether Raheem Sterling is a good role model or not. But this is a man who still needs a role model in his life. He's 23 years old. How old? I don't know how old he was when he got his first cap, but he could not have been, 18 or 19 if we're looking at 40 caps. He has almost twice as many caps as Harry Kane. Harry Kane is on 26 caps with 18 goals. Raheem Sterling is on 40 caps with only 2 goals. But Raheem Sterling has more caps than Danny Welbeck, and Danny Welbeck is 4 years older than him. So I think you're right about there is an element of youth within this team that relieves some of that pressure on them. But Raheem Sterling seems to be strangely in this Messi-esque, Ronaldo-esque situation where he is having pressure poured onto him. But the dude's 23 years old. He got a tattoo of a gun. So,
I'm not sure why that really matters. I mean, it's a sort of thing that the media, of course, are going to latch onto and try and make a story out of. But I mean, it has a bit of, like, when he explained where it comes from, it makes sense. I think that once he got an explanation from Raheem, the media very quickly were like, oh, well, okay, then fine. Like they wanted it to be a bit more like, I think they would have loved to have pinned it on like video games or like urban hip hop culture, that gangster culture which they assume. Well, maybe I don't want to take too many steps here, but maybe you worry that they assume he is intrigued with, at least because of his background. And his race.
The fact is his name is Raheem, right? Like this is a conservative media that is looking and going, oh, there is a man named Raheem. He is in the public eye and he has a gun tattoo. Well, why don't we talk about how all those things link together in a negative light?
Yeah, and it would not surprise me if it was the Daily Mail that broke that story first.
Yeah. And it's
interesting what you say about his age, though, and the fact that maybe because he is the third most capped player in this squad at the age of 23. Like you say, he's on 40. Is he 41 now? 40 caps.
Yeah,
40 caps for England. Jordan Henderson, second most capped player in the squad, with 40. Where 40, is he? 41 caps, but he's in his late 20s. So, Jordan Henderson and I share a birthday.
Oh,
how nice is that?
Happy birthday, Jordan Henderson.
Happy birthday for a couple of weeks ago, Jordan. Yeah. The most capped player in the squad is Gary Cahill, who has 60 caps. And he's obviously in his 30s and was one of the only 3 players in the squad who are over 30. Him and Ashley Young and Jamie Vardy, the only over 30s in the squad, which actually makes our squad the third youngest on average,
right,
behind France and Nigeria. But I mean, if you look through plenty of other squads, there are some squads that have multiple players who have over 100 caps. But going back to what you were saying about the pressure that maybe is being put on Raheem Sterling, I don't agree that it's up there. Obviously, I don't think you meant it was on a par with the likes of Ronaldo and Messi. He isn't the one shining the light that we can all rally behind. But he's certainly a player who showed loads of promise. And you're right, he must have been capped for England for the first time when he was quite young, 18 or 19 years old perhaps. But even in those early years, he was a player that showed a lot of promise. It had shades of when Theo Walcott got called up to the World Cup squad when he was a teenager and then didn't even play. Yeah. Like he took up a spot that could have been used by a player. I think it was Sven-Goran Eriksson was the manager then. Yeah. And there was all this furore about why even bother taking him if you were never going to play him in the first place. So Raheem has had that kind of, when he was at Liverpool, I think that his goal scoring record may have been hampered by the fact that he wants to be up there on the front line. Like England have actually been playing him in these first 2 games, playing him right up there with Harry Kane. That's where he wants to be. At Liverpool, he was always pushed really wide. So he could show a bit of his pizzazz and his zip and some of his skill, and his assist record might be quite good. That might be worth looking at. But now that he's moved to Man City, he's allowed to come further forward and support the front player, whether it's Aguero or Gabriel Jesus at Man City. And his goal scoring record last year was great. It completely justified at least his inclusion in the World Cup squad and maybe even his starting place, and him getting the number 10 shirt, which effectively means, hey, you're going to play. You're going to play every game. I think with the way modern football goes, 23 is kind of like you're expected to be at your prime at 23, 24, 25. Like that's no longer young in footballing terms. I mean, if you look at it in terms of a scale, you retire by the time you're 35. Like if you're lucky. Jermaine Genius, who was a former England and Spurs player, who's now a pundit for the BBC, he had to retire at 31 because of injury. And we've seen players have to retire even sooner because you never really know when something is going to go wrong with your body or you take a knock that ends your career. So at 23, you need to be firing on all cylinders because your days are numbered, your years are limited. And he does have to be of the role model that professional footballers are and are trained to be from a very young age. And I think the youngest player in the squad, Alexander-Arnold, is 19. It seems strange that a man born in 1998 is now a professional footballer in the England squad for the World Cup. But and he needs to be a role model. If football is held in such high regard, especially among kids, that as soon as you sign professional papers, you are a role model. That's it, and you need to behave. And I think what we have seen from this squad, we haven't always seen with England squads. Not necessarily even in football. I mean, in other sports, sometimes the professionals let us down, or from all around the world, people let their countries down as athletes when they should be behaving themselves, but they don't. This squad have not shown many of the misbehaviour that we think maybe people were worried about with them being young and with what we've seen through social media, that a lot of them are very fun and like to express themselves and show their personal side on their social media accounts. And it was a question of, can they be mature enough to go to a huge tournament like this and perform and gel and do England proud? And so far, it's been seamless. I think they've been absolutely brilliant in their professionalism and what they've shown. We'd like to see better performances from Raheem Sterling, but certainly his character has been exemplary. He's tried to do what he can. He's trying his best. But yeah, I think it'll just go. We'll see how far we can go with the right attitude, which, as we've seen from some of the lower teams who have showed up and remained organised and given 100% with great spirit and great determination, that you can really hamper stronger teams. Mexico did it to Germany, which is the one example that still sticks out in my head, because that I can't believe that ever happened.
Yeah.
How did that ever happen? And we saw just yesterday with Iran and Morocco holding Portugal and Spain to draws, that if you spirit and character can take you a long way. So if you combine that with the ability, I mean, England are we would hope to think one of the better teams footballing wise in the tournament. If we can keep our attitude right, I think there's no reason why we can't go a long way. And hopefully Raheem can. I like to call him Radio Raheem because it reminds me. Do you remember Do the Right Thing, the Spike Lee movie?
Yeah, great film.
Radio Raheem. Yeah. So if I'm yelling at Raheem on screen during the England game, I usually call him Radio. So I'd like to see. As much as Marcus Rashford is breathing down his neck for his starting spot, and I really like Marcus Rashford, I think it'll be better for the whole England squad and for the team, and obviously for Sterling himself, if he is the one who can get himself firing, get himself bubbling, get himself a goal for his confidence, and be a linchpin for us going forward in this tournament.
Well, I know that all 5 of our listeners are really hoping and really waiting for us to talk about Belgium, but Belgium are, no matter what happens in this final match between England and Belgium, we know that they are going through to the next round. We haven't really had a chance to touch on them yet. So I think that Belgium is a team that we should kind of leave. We should leave until they play whoever they play in the next round, because that gives us a real chance to focus on them then. And England did just win 6-1, so that's not going to happen again in this tournament. So I think this is really kind of a good chance to focus on England, knowing they are probably going to get decimated in a couple of days anyway.
Hey.
But this is for me, the England Panama match was really interesting because I had to sleep during the England Tunisia match. I didn't get to see it because of I complained about the time difference before, and it's kind of the same deal. The same deal with the England Tunisia match, but with the England Panama match, I was excited because I actually got to watch it. And on the one hand, I was messaging you while it was going on, and into it, I had that thing of because I'm in China at the moment, I'm not hearing any of this it's coming home stuff, except for secondhand, right? I'm not getting it in the wider media. Only when my brother will go, "Oh, it's coming home." I'm like, "What? Do we get another dog or something like that?" Right? What's coming home? But watching this England match, I didn't realise how excited I was until Stones scores that first goal. 8 minutes in, Stones, I've never heard of this guy before in my life. Bang, he gets a goal. Bang, 40 minutes, he gets another goal. I don't know him from literally anybody, but when he scores those goals, I think he is my new favourite person in the world, right? I'm roaring. The neighbours are like, "Oh my god, what's happening in Dominic's house?" Right?
You did message me to say I didn't realise how much I cared about England at this World Cup until I started screaming.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly how I felt about this. I was like, yeah, it's England, who cares? And then we're fucking beating Panama 5-0 at half time, and I've never flown so high in my life. But what I thought was really interesting about this England game was, Stones' goal was great. Stones' second goal was great. Lingard's goal especially was beautiful. That was just great football, right? That is, when we think about what good football is, Lingard's goal was like mamma mia, what a perfect goal. You can't ask for more than that. But then we're looking at Harry Kane, right? And Harry Kane, the guy has scored 4 goals in 2 games, right? You can't hold that against him. No one would ever hold that against him.
5 goals in 2 games.
5 goals in 2 games.
That's not short.
Oh, of course. Sorry. Yeah, he got the hat trick. I'm sorry. He got the hat trick in that game, which is insane. But the first 2 of Harry Kane's goals in this game have come from the same way that we have mentioned multiple times in this podcast. Is that perhaps it's because of VAR, perhaps there's just something in the air in this contest, but barely a match goes by without a penalty, right? Like, it is rare for a match to go by without one penalty being called in it. It seems like every other game has a penalty called in it, and England-Panama has 2 penalties called in. Now, granted, Harry Kane's penalty taking in this situation is like the most perfect penalty taking I've ever seen in my life.
It's right. It touches me all over when I see those penalties.
Yeah.
It's
because
incredible.
The same reason that when you see Messi, Messi takes that penalty in the first Argentina game and he just fucks it. Right, and you are saying, like, this is a guy his head isn't in the right space, right? This is the greatest player in the world, and he doesn't even look confident stepping up to the penalty spot. But twice in this match, Harry Kane steps up, I have never seen a cucumber that looks as cool as Harry Kane looks stepping up to that penalty spot, right? Like, he goes up, he slicks his hair back both times because, he's probably got some sponsorship deal. He steps he steps back and he just nails those goals. Nails them.
And in the face of all that I don't know what you want to call it, but the Panama players were getting really, like, I could see them shouting in his ear. The goalie was getting in his face.
Very
trying
physical.
Everything they can to get into his head. But he looked like he had shut off the world.
Yeah.
He was in his own bubble and he was just waiting for his time, and he knew exactly what he was going to do and that they were going to go in. There was no doubt in his mind.
Yeah. And what is the name of the Panama captain that you mentioned to me before? What's his name? Do you remember?
Roman Torres.
Yeah. You said to me before that now that he plays in the MLS or something, right? And now
he
is in FIFA, the video game, the EA game, he is now the strongest player on FIFA or something like that, right?
He's got the highest strength rating in the game.
So going into this, Panama are going to be a physical team, and they played a physical game. I haven't seen a game of football that has been that physical for a long time.
Yeah, I think it wasn't really football what they were playing.
Yeah,
they were physical to the point of a ball might not have even been on the pitch, and they probably would have still been grabbing and pushing and squeezing.
Yeah, but I think what's so great about what England did here was that the England team of old would have been, just falling to the ground in the way we would be used to seeing from other countries. And there was a game, I think I saw a game yesterday, I can't remember exactly which one it was, but it was one of the lesser teams, as we were saying before. Which game did I watch yesterday? It may have been
yesterday.
I think it was Russia-Uruguay. And Uruguay are one of the teams I would think of as falling to the ground and not getting back up, right? But Russia lost that game 3-0. But what really impressed me was there was a time where the Uruguay players just threw a Russian guy to the ground, but rather than just staying down trying to get a free kick, the guy just got back up and went for it, right? And that's kind of how I felt about this England team was, the Panama was being physical and kind of messing them around. But the England team that I'm used to seeing are the ones that just collapse, and then you're like, for God's sake, right? This is England. Millwall and football violence are part of football culture in England. Football hooligans are famous from our country. Why are you collapsing to the ground? I don't want you to play like Panama, but I want you to have more of an element of that, be strong. Right?
There's a bit of a plague of this kind of thing in football, and that's the one thing that's wound me up the most about this World Cup is that much level there is of play acting and falling to the ground. With such weak contact, looking for free kicks before there's an opportunity. There have been opportunities where a forward player has a chance to score, and then they're in the penalty box, and they could just pull the trigger and shoot, but they would rather try and get a penalty.
Yeah.
Because well, I don't know why. Because penalties are hard. Like I know you're standing there by yourself. Nobody can tackle you. You're only 12 yards from goal. But there's a lot of pressure on a penalty kick.
Yeah.
So it's not guaranteed that you're going to score. So the only advantage I can see in all this, whether it's in the box, whether it's in the middle of the pitch, is you're only trying to get the other team in trouble. You're only trying to get more yellow cards or maybe even red cards for the other team, which is it's completely against the spirit of football for me, and it's something that's been germinating for decades, and it's more and more, and you see it more domestically. You see it a lot much more in the other European leagues besides the English Premier League. But when you see it on the world stage, in the World Cup, there is obviously so many players from all around the world where this is just a normal part of football. So yeah, you're right. It's Russia are a good one actually, where they don't play that. They don't play that. They want to, especially. I think maybe that's something to do with the fact that they're hosting and they're in front of their home fans. Like they want to be seen as strong Russian men. They don't want to be all these namby-pamby Europeans who just fling themselves to the ground and roll 8 times, and then when the free kick's been given or not, they hop back to their feet and be like, and sort of do that fake limping shit.
Yeah.
Like, I was hurt there, but now I'm going to run back in and get into position, or now I'm going to try and run and get in position to score a goal because I snicked my team a free kick. But you're absolutely right. England didn't rise to any of that, and they've been exemplary in that regard.
Yeah, and one of the things that actually really impressed me with this was, we got 2 penalties, but those were actual penalties, right? Like those deserved
Stonewallers.
Yeah, those actually were penalties. This isn't a case of our players just collapsing to the ground. They should actually have been penalties, and they were. But on the other hand, I think we have I'm going to call it, England has 62 minutes of gold. And I think a lot of it is luck. If Panama had been more reserved, then Kane wouldn't have got those 2 penalties, right? So let's live in an alternate Elseworld, DC Elseworld style universe. I've got full comic books again. A parallel universe where the Panama defenders defend better. Kane doesn't get those 2 penalties. Okay, now we're looking at a 4-1, assuming that that their reserved their reserve defending doesn't allow more goals in. So we're looking at 4-1, right? So Panama, if they played better, would really be in a position of 4-1. Then we look at Harry Kane's 62-minute goal, 62nd minute goal, where that is just the world's flukiest goal, right?
Yeah.
An England player strikes towards the goal. It goes off the back heel of Harry Kane, deflecting it to the other side of the goal, completely by chance. The Panama goalie, there's nothing he can do about it because this is absolutely ridiculous. And
when you're hot, you're hot. So, sometimes when you're in luck, you're in luck, and you can't stop yourself from scoring, even if you're facing the other way and you're not even got the ball.
So that then puts the score to 6-0. So we're 62 minutes in. We've seen a new England, the Gareth Southgate's England, the youth coming forward. 62 minutes in, Harry Kane gets his hat-trick. They immediately take him off.
I think he was about to go off anyway as well. So I think because whoever came on for him was warming up on the side of the pitch.
Right.
And then the goal went in and they carried on with the substitution anyway. So presumably that was going to happen regardless.
So
again, you couldn't be more lucky, could you?
Yeah, well,
You get that freak hat trick in that way, but also you were about to be taken off.
Yeah.
The minute you're about to be taken off, it happens.
Yeah. So then Harry Kane comes off. Lingard comes off. There's one more player who comes off. I can't quite remember who that is.
Trippier came off a bit later for Danny Rose.
Right. But for Danny Rose. And Danny Rose is the perfect example of what happens after the 62nd minute. Because for 62 minutes, we have seen an England that we are excited to see. Then they start making the substitutions. And Danny Rose was the one player that I noticed who all of a sudden, England go from being a team that is dominating this match 6-0 to being on the back foot. And I don't know what happened, but when those players came off, Danny Rose was the perfect example. A Panama player crosses a kick, it's going out for a goal kick. Danny Rose slides in, kicks it out for a corner. right? If Danny Rose was not there, it would have been a goal kick. Danny Rose is involved, it goes out for a corner. I don't know what changed in this England squad, but the minute Harry Kane and the others start coming off, maybe it's just because we're taking off our attacking players, bringing on our defensive players. We're telegraphing we're not attacking anymore, we're going on the defensive. But Panama brings it up, and for about the 30 minutes that are left of that game, Panama they've swapped. They're not this aggressive defensive team anymore. Is this their first goal in World Cup history for Panama? I think
it was.
Yeah, and they deserved that goal. And I think you said to me that Gareth Southgate was annoyed that we even conceded that goal. Is that right? Why was Gareth Southgate annoyed?
Well, he said in the post-match interview that he didn't even like the performance, really. He didn't like how we started. He said we started really cagey and it took us a while to gel. And then, I think in terms of trying to qualify at the top of the group to be in the best position for the next round, it could come down to goal difference. So we're in that 6-goal cushion would have put us top on goal difference as opposed to, and then that when Panama got that 1 goal back, it means we're even on points with Belgium at the top of the group, even on goal difference, even on goals scored. So then it comes down to who's got the least yellow cards. It determines who was sitting on top. So he really wanted that extra cushion. And I mean, I didn't want Panama to score either, but the part of me that loves football probably more than I love England is I wanted Panama to score. Like it was, and like we talked about, they changed their character a bit during the game. The first half, they were a bunch of yobs, and it was kind of embarrassing. And like I said, I was glad half time came because it could have descended into too many goals for England and maybe some more disciplinary action for the Panama players because they were just losing their rags completely, losing their heads. So when the goal came, I was like, oh, that's annoying, but good for them. Yeah. Especially since it was like because we talked about Roman Torres being their captain. He's like their on the pitch captain. Still, he's 32, so he's one of the more experienced players. But the guy came on, Beloy. He's like 36 or 37, and he was their true captain. Because and Torres handed him the captain's armband when he came on. So for Panama to score and for him to score it was kind of a nice little fairy tale. But I'm sure Gareth Southgate, if he wasn't England manager, would have said the same thing. But as England manager, he would have much rather the 6-0 win, and we sit pretty on top of Group G without all these caveats to break the tie between us and Belgium.
Well, one would hope now that... I think that there are two ways of looking at this. Number one, we conceded the goal. We played infinitely worse when we started making those substitutions. We saw the England team of old, and we conceded a goal. For me, that is a comfortable reminder, right? If you are going to get a reminder of this is how England normally play, you want to get it when you're 6-0 up. And we see them stepping back. They've scored 6 goals. You can take the chance to relax. But if we had been ahead at the top of the table, then when we go into Belgium, we would be in that mindset of but we're top of the table, right? But now I think Gareth Southgate is annoyed going into this Belgium game, and I think that is an advantage that we have. We're not relaxed going into this Belgium game because Belgium are one of the teams that could go ahead and win this thing. And if we go into the Belgium game going, but we're sitting pretty on the top of the table, then any chance England has to relax in a game, they will take. And the fact that we can't relax going into this Belgium game, I think is an advantage. I don't know what you think about that.
No, I completely agree with you. I think that's very astute. Well done, Dom. Excellent.
Thank you. You know what? I feel I'm really getting into this football thing. I try
not to patronise you anymore, but I do completely agree with you. I think that's exactly the right mindset to go into because we did. I think it wasn't necessarily. I mean, I think Danny Rose. It's a shame for Danny Rose because he missed a lot of the season through injury, and he was included, I think, on merit and on his ability, which is good. And when he's in form, he maybe is our best left back, and he might have been first choice ahead of Ashley Young if he was played the whole season.
Yeah.
But that little shift in defence, it was strange that when Danny Rose was coming on, I was like, the obvious swap is for Ashley Young because it's left wing back for left wing back, and Ashley Young being one of the older players, you think maybe he needs a bit more rest. But no, they take off Kieran Trippier, who's had an amazing tournament, so far. I think one of our best players over the 2 games. They switch actually on to right wing back, so Danny Rose can go at left full back, and then that are left back areas where their goal comes from.
Yeah.
So you're right. I think maybe that just comes down to a little bit of nerves on his part. He's not quite 100% sharp. He's not 100% fit. So I'm sure he'll be annoyed at that. But I think there is that temptation to take your foot off the pedal. And if you're England and you're 6-0 up and it's the 70th minute, yeah, sure, you're going to start to wind it down. But if you're Panama and you're fighting for your pride, you're not going to take your foot off the gas.
Yeah.
So I think it was actually a very worthy and timely reminder to the England players that, with exactly what you said, that we can't relax. This is the World Cup. This isn't a 38-game long season. This is every game matters. Every game counts. Every goal counts. Every minute counts. And going into Belgium, we do need to go into it thinking we can't coast this. We're going to need to fight to the last, to the death. Even though it's the group stage, it matters as much as if we're playing them in the quarterfinals or semi-finals or whatever. So and I think if we had gone in on top of the group, having not conceded against Panama, we would have been too comfortable, and that's exactly where complacency comes in.
Yeah, and good on Panama as well. Like as we were just saying, like this is their first World Cup ever, right? And they just conceded. They've conceded 9 goals in 2 games, right? But they scored their first ever World Cup, and in that last 30 minutes, I think when Harry Kane is subbed off, our captain changes to Jordan Henderson. That is a moment where the match, for me, that was when the match took a turn.
You can imagine the Panama players breathing a sigh of relief seeing Harry Kane go off the pitch.
Yeah, but he scored a hat-trick. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
But,
so they're like, oh, thank God he's gone. Right,
yeah.
Now maybe we'll have... Because Jamie Vardy came on for him. He barely touched the ball that last half an hour.
I thought the same thing. I thought, well, now Jamie Vardy is on. He's second to Harry Kane. But this is Jamie Vardy, of all people. Like, this is a guy who's going to put in a performance because he's second to Harry Kane. He wants to show...
He's at least going to run around.
Yeah. But again, to Panama,
help.
Yes, Panama lost the game 6-1. But if we put this into a time frame, Panama lost 2/3 of the game, right? They lost 60 of 90 minutes. But I would say for that last 30 minutes, Panama owned that game. They owned that last 30 minutes of the game. And it's a game of 2 halves, not of thirds. But if it was a game of thirds, Panama won one of those thirds. And I think they really deserve some credit going in for that match, because as we're saying, this is their first World Cup, and they deserved that goal. This isn't a game where you're like a Portugal game where you're like, ugh, or right, or a Uruguay game where you're like, oh, they won 3-0, fuck off Uruguay. But in this game, Panama, they deserved that goal, and good on them. But quickly, before I get too distracted, let's jump on to Group H, because if you told me, David, that Group H contained Colombia, Poland, Japan, and Senegal, I'm looking at Group H going, well, basically it's a fight between Lewandowski and James Rodriguez for who is going to finish first. Now, 2 games in, Robert Lewandowski and Poland are out, and James Rodriguez and Colombia are third in this group. It is helmed equally by Japan and Senegal, both on 4 points, both on 4 goals scored and 3 goals against. What the hell has happened in Group H?
It's gone the weirdest of all the groups, I think. I've said to you before that when I was trying to predict who would come where, I thought Poland were going to top this group. Not ashamed to admit it. I never call myself an expert on these on football, just a fan, but I definitely got that one wrong. I thought Lewandowski's got a bit of a similar situation to some other nations that have produced world-class strikers, but nowhere near the quality in any other area of the pitch to help them out. Shades of Egypt, shades of oh god, now I'm on the spot trying to think of another country that's got a really good striker but not anyone else who's any good. But it's so odd that a player can completely outshine the rest of his compatriots the way that Robin Lewandowski does, and it's his first World Cup. He's never been to a World Cup before, and I really thought he was going to rally his troops, get the team behind him, but it didn't happen. But I won't say I'm upset about it, because Japan have been a surprise package, I think, in this World Cup. Senegal have been exciting and they've been fun. Colombia found their feet in that second game and started playing some of that pizzazzy, sexy South American football in that second game. And James Rodriguez sort of found his feet and dictated that match against Poland. He ran it completely. And Falcao is another player who has never been to a World Cup before. One of the most famous strikers in modern football. Really unlucky to miss the last World Cup through injury. Had a torrid time with around those injuries, where he was prolific at Atletico Madrid and his first spell at Monaco. He tries a bit of English football after he's had these horrible knee injuries. Does bugger all at Man U, does bugger all at Chelsea. Then he goes back to Monaco and finds the Falcao of old, and just, you could say it's a less demanding league, less demanding standard of football. But I think any impartial football fan is real happy to see Falcao at his best again, and for him to finally get his World Cup goal like he did on Sunday. But I'm excited about how open this top of this group is, especially since the teams that go through are going to be playing either England or Belgium in the next round. And I think if you're England, you're kind of hoping to beat Belgium or get to stay at the top of the group. And I think you'd rather play Japan over Senegal and Colombia. But really, it could go any way. Like we saw yesterday with Morocco, even though they had been kicked out, even though they'd been knocked out of the tournament, they really showed up against Spain, and they really gave them a hard time, and ended up taking a point away from the tournament. And 2 goals against a team like Spain is something to be proud of. So Poland, even though they're going home, they could just want to go home on a high. Give Japan, I was going to say a good seeing to, but maybe that's not the best use of words. But they won't want to go out floundering. They'll want to go out fighting. But having said that, I think the other tie, Senegal, Colombia, that's where the excitement's going to lie. Those are 2 teams who play really good football. Colombia with their South American style, lots of skill, lots of passing, lots of excitement, and Senegal with their pace, their counter-attacking pace is unbelievable. And Colombia maybe do lack a little bit in defence, so that should hopefully be an exciting game, and maybe we'll see a lot of goals in that one. But it's the Group H is. I'm glad that it's the last round of group games. I would have been not annoying, but I'm glad we have to wait till the end of the first stage to find out how this is going to end up, because I don't think anyone can really predict how it's going to go.
Okay, so we've spoken about groups G, Group H. Now, one thing we haven't actually managed to speak about yet on the podcast is the politics of the World Cup. And the whole point of Who Watches the World Cup is to not only discuss the football, the amazing football that we've been able to witness, but also how the dark hand of politics has delving into our pure, beautiful game and ripped it apart from the inside. And that is no more obvious than with Mo Salah. So it's time for our first and only segment of Magic Moments.
The timing is bad, but it was still great.
We'll get it sorted in the edit. It's fine.
Steve, fix it in post.
Fix it in post, damn it. So, Mo Salah, I wasn't aware of. I haven't been able to see any of the Premier League going into this. You told me about Mo Salah and how he's really taken the Premier League by storm this season, playing for Liverpool. It came into this World Cup with a large expectation of delivering for Egypt. He is really Egypt's standout player. Dave, tell me, how did he even perform in this World Cup?
I think we have to look back to the Champions League final where Liverpool played Real Madrid to look at the kind of the genesis of Egypt's failure at this World Cup. They lost again on Monday to Saudi Arabia with I think it was a 95th minute. Saudi Arabia won that game, leaving Egypt bottom of the table with no points. I don't think if they've ever won a game at a World Cup. Actually, I think I remember hearing, which is sad. But with that injury that Mo Salah sustained in the Champions League final, which put his whole tournament in doubt for a while, and then we talked about it in episode 1 actually about whether he'd make the first game or whether he'd be back for the second game. Egypt named him on the bench for the first game, but he was not brought on against Uruguay. I think maybe that was a bit of just mind games, trying to put some fear into Uruguay that maybe Mo would get on the pitch, but I don't think he was ever going to be fit enough to play, otherwise they probably would have brought him on. And the story of Egypt's games against Russia and Saudi Arabia is kind of similar in that, like we touched on with Robert Lewandowski, Mo is fields, acres, universes away from any of his closest teammates in terms of their quality. He stands alone really as a world-class player at a World Cup for Egypt. There's no one in that squad that comes close, which is a real great shame. We've seen sometimes these players can drag their countries through and get results on their own, but I think as well as Mo did in qualifying and when he sort of broke through with Egypt at an Olympics, I think it was under 2012 where he kind of stole the show. I just felt very sorry for him. He just looked so lost, and some of the things that have gone on before and around this tournament, I think, have affected his mentality and his confidence. Because watching him against Russia and against Saudi Arabia, it was a bit like watching Messi for Argentina, and he looked despondent. He's wandering around, kind of just waiting for his chance. He's not leading from the front. He's not chasing defenders down. And that could be down to his fitness as well. Maybe his shoulder is giving him more problems than they want to admit, and they had to kind of rush him in just to stand any chance of doing anything in this tournament. But I mean, he managed to. I think he scored both of Egypt's only 2 goals at this World Cup, and so maybe we can assume that without him, they wouldn't have scored any. And it looks like Mo was just waiting to go home. I think he looked fed up, and hopeless, and it was a real great shame because, as we said in that first episode about Group A, the World Cup is about the best players on the best stage, and showing, performing in front of the world at the highest level. And we didn't see the Mo of the season gone by in an Egypt shirt this summer, which is despite the cleverness of his goal against Saudi Arabia yesterday. I know Egypt were basically out anyway, so he didn't really need to celebrate. But it would have been nice to give something back to the fans, because he scored that goal and he sort of just turned around and did a bit of a wave, hugged his teammates and trotted back to the centre circle for the restart. So I really think he was thinking about what he was going to eat on the flight home. I think during that last game against Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, that resignation there, I think, is really telling, and that's where I would kind of like to pull in these elements of politics about it, because as we're saying, the expectations of Mo Salah going into this was, will he even be fit, right? And if we know professional athletes the way that the Western culture has come to know professional athletes, it's that will I be ready for the World Cup is the worst thing any athlete can go through. And he would have been striving to have been fit for that World Cup, right? He would have been going, no, coach, put me in, I'm ready. And as you're saying, he is loved in his home country. Since the World Cup started, there have been masses of pictures of Egyptian graffiti of his face, just across Cairo, across Egypt, of just, the most beautiful fan art of that really shows what you're saying about these hopes and dreams that Mo Salah kind of carries on his shoulders. But this has all been darkened and corrupted by the way that the politics has really worked its way in here. And as I've said multiple times, I haven't watched much of the Premier League. I didn't know what was going on. But reading articles, I'm seeing phrases like an icon for mainstream moderate Islam in a Europe still reeling from Islamist attacks. right? Like,
Wow.
what a ridiculous phrase to use for a player. We're saying, here is a football player who has done really good for Liverpool. Oh, and by the way, he's the most important person in making sure Islam is seen in a certain light in Europe, right? Like, what the fuck kind of pressure are you putting on him? Then, as well as that,
Wow,
you're
yeah.
saying, oh, and he's also the most important player for Egypt in the entire World Cup. And if he's injured, their entire World Cup dreams are hampered, right? Like, the pressure on Mo Salah's shoulders must have been incredible. Then Egypt decides that it's going to host its World Cup team in Chechnya. Now, there are certain reasons that this makes sense. In all of Russia, Chechnya is the only Muslim majority part of the country. So, as we've discussed this before, that kind of makes sense that if you have Muslim athletes and that they are going through a period of fasting and they have certain religious things that they have to abide by, then being in a Muslim majority area makes sense for adhering to those kinds of needs. But also, Chechnya is kind of far from all of the different places you have to play for the World Cup. Also, Mo Salah has found himself used and abused this World Cup. We mentioned before Ramzan Kadyrov, the leader of Chechnya, infamous for the anti-gay purges that have taken place in Chechnya. We mentioned in the Group A episode, I think, how Kadyrov ambushed Mo Salah and brought him down for a photo opportunity and said, and took him around on like a walking tour and used Salah as a way, as a propaganda tool, as a way of saying, hey, you know that I murdered all of those gay people last year, but look, he's from Africa, so I can't be all bad. Which it's ridiculous because yes, they are both. There are religious ties between the Egyptian team and the Egyptian team and the area in which they are staying. But again, Salah plays in the UK, right? If Mo Salah was seen over this World Cup to be supporting a guy who purges gay people, when he returns to Liverpool, that's going to be a real fucking problem. The UK, yeah, sure, we're fine with kicking out immigrants, but if you were to say that you liked purging gays, there's going to be a problem there, I think, going forward. But then the Chechnyan leader comes forward and he awards Mo Salah honorary Chechnyan citizenship. He says, oh, Mo Salah, you are a Chechnyan like us. Which, I don't know much about Mo Salah, but I imagine that was not something he was angling for. I doubt that he was stepping forward into Chechnya going, wouldn't it be great? Wouldn't it be great if I was also a Chechnyan citizen? But it's not just Chechnya that are doing this. The Egyptian FA took an image of Salah to advertise one of the phone companies. They call it, telecommunications, WE or WE in Egypt. They took his image, used the Egyptian FA to publish it. But Mo Salah has an agreement with Vodafone. So he has a personal agreement with Vodafone as a sponsorship deal, but the Egyptian FA takes his image to promote a rival company, which obviously poses problems with his own financial security. Again, in 2014, the Egyptians, they look at Mo Salah and they threaten him with military service. At this time, he's playing in Chelsea, right? So he's playing in the UK, so he's not in Egypt to do his military service. But Egypt says, well, why aren't you doing your military service? You should be here. But he said, well, I'm playing for Chelsea. And they said, well, then your family isn't able to leave Egypt. And this is again the case of Mo Salah being used as a propaganda piece. He is a famous, prominent Egyptian who is being used by the Egyptian government as a tool for this is what Egyptians should be. He did actually manage to get the exemption that he was legally, rightfully should have had. He did get that, but he had to thank Egypt's president for it. Then again, we see him in Chechnya being used and abused by the Russian government to to disprove any ideas that they could be discriminatory. No, we don't hate gay people. No, we don't hate Middle Eastern people. Look, here's Mo Salah. This is the way that he is being used is unprecedented, I think, in this particular... The only person you could think that would possibly compare is David Beckham, but David Beckham was always seemingly in control of the things that he was publishing. Yes, he was a face of football, but the amount of money he has made off of that is ridiculous, and he was never put in a situation where maybe he was seen as killing gay people the same way that Mo Salah could be shown as it being in support of that. It's insane what he has been put through. And now there are talks of him resigning from the international team. He's 26 years old, and they're talking about him resigning from the international team at the age of 26, which is just ridiculous. But again, this isn't even new. I'm not sure. I'm seeing this player's name. I don't remember him personally, but Mohamed Abubakarika, sorry, who was another Egyptian player, was accused by the Egyptian government for having ties to the Muslim Brotherhood, the former Egyptian government. There was Ahmed al-Maghani, who called the Egyptian president useless on Twitter, on Facebook, and then was punished for it. A Turkish player, Hakan Sukar, had to flee to America because he angered President Erdogan, the Turkish president, who has just controversially won re-election again, despite massive opposition against him. There is just a position that these football players are being put in. These are football players. And yes, we could say, is Raheem Sterling being unfairly treated by Western media for having a tattoo? But he is not being forced to flee to another country. He is not being used by Chechnyan leaders to perhaps support the murder of minority people. I think, if I was Mo Salah and I was looking at the way I had been treated, retiring from the World Cup at this age does not seem like such a ridiculous thing to do. Do you think if he was to continue to the World Cup, or even when he goes back to Liverpool, do you think this is going to be something that is going to play on his mind going back to English football in September?
Yeah, I think it absolutely will. Yeah, I can't imagine him putting this behind him with any great swiftness. I think it's going to be playing on his mind for quite a while now. And like you say, it's not totally. It's quite understandable that he may want to walk away from the Egyptian national team. It's not going to be an easy decision, obviously, for him. He's clearly their standout player. He's their star. And whilst maybe the Egyptian FA deserve a little bit of a reprimand for how they're mistreating him, I don't think Mo. I think the way he was ambushed by the Chechnyan leader is an example of how nice a guy Mo is. Like he's well known for doing anything for the fans, and within Egypt he is known for doing absolutely anything for a fellow Egyptian. He won't hesitate. There's a video that came out from an airport. Where did you see this?
No, I didn't.
He was going through security checks at an airport, and loads of fans were up on the concourse waving at the team, and someone chucked an Egyptian shirt down from the concourse in front of Mo and a pen, and he picked him up off the floor, and he was seen yelling up to the fans, "What name should I put on it?"
Oh,
and so he signed it and chucked it back. And this is after a disappointing second game.
Yeah.
In the group stage, so he's got a heart of gold. He's such a nice guy, and that's why I think he'd be so hurt by the things that the Egyptian FA have done to him, and how he was kind of just found himself in this predicament with the Chechnyan leader, because he's not the sort of player who would go no and just walk away.
Yeah, he
would just smile for the cameras and do his bit, because I think he's one of these truly humble football players who knows where he comes from, knows how lucky he is, and will give back at any opportunity. And that's probably why he's a little bit vulnerable to these kinds of machinations that are pushing him into uncomfortable positions.
Yeah. Well, he's hoping that Mo Salah isn't put in a position whereby he has to retire from the Egyptian team, because it would be great to see a world-class player be able to bring his talents to his national team in future tournaments, and also be a continuing inspiration for the Egyptian people and future Egyptian teams. That would be a real shame.
Exactly, yeah. I don't think he'd do that to the people. I think he knows how important and how how revered he is to his compatriots, his fellow Egyptians. So I think that loyalty to his country and his people will override any frustrations he might have with the Egyptian FA. But that's not to say he won't try and bargain with them a little bit, try and get him and his agent to have a few words. But yeah, I think he'll have a tough rest of the summer before pre-season. And it'll be interesting to see how he performs in the first few weeks of the Premier League season with Liverpool, whether he has put it behind and can rediscover his form from last year. But I would be surprised if he turned his back on Egypt. I'll say that.
Well, hopefully this won't be the last segment of Magic Moments heading forward. It is a shame that Egypt have gone out, that he didn't really have a chance to shine, that his World Cup was overshadowed really by this kind of controversy. It would be nice to have some positive news going forward, and if any more does arise, then we will be sure to let you know. But Dave, it seems to me really that we're coming to the end of the group stages now. Everybody has played their second game. Some of the groups have played their third games already. We're getting closer to the quarterfinals. I think maybe we have 1 or 2 more episodes in us before we really jump into the group stages. Is there any matches looking forward that you're really looking forward to before the quarterfinals kick off?
I'm just looking forward to seeing how the knockout rounds start. How's it look? At least the two, try and get my words out. With groups A and B now finishing, we know that Uruguay are going to play Portugal in the next round, and Russia are going to play Spain. I think Spain probably lucked out there. We saw how tight it was at the end of the Group B games, both games ending in a draw. Portugal nor Spain really showing their strengths, and Russia kind of having a bit of a reality check after seeming to be firing on all cylinders against Saudi Arabia and Egypt, coming up against tougher opposition in Uruguay, kind of brought them back down to earth a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see if they can rekindle a bit of that early magic they got in those first 2 games. But if anything, we've just seen that you come across strong opposition like Uruguay, and they don't really have what it takes to cut to the mustard. Is that the phrase? Cut the mustard?
It is now.
Doesn't make an awful lot of sense, does it? But so I think Spain, if Spain or Portugal, which one of them were hoping to finish top, they were hoping to play Russia, and so Spain have lucked out there. Portugal, Uruguay, that sounds exciting to me. I'm looking forward to seeing that. Ronaldo versus Suarez, although Suarez is another one of those players we've not really seen the best of. Edison Cavani at the Uruguay is really put in more of a performance so far, and they have a player that I really like, Bekontur in midfield. He's looked really classy, and I won't be surprised if he gets a move to a big European club after the tournament's over. So yeah, just looking forward to seeing how the groups shake out. Obviously, with a bit of self-interest being aimed at groups G and H, and to see how that turns out. England playing Belgium, I think that's one of the most exciting games on paper of the group stages. Is sort of maybe just behind Spain, Portugal before the tournament started, on the ones that were most mouth-watering. So interesting to see how that goes. Hopefully it won't be a bore draw with both teams knowing they're going through and they don't really have to try that hard. Although nobody wants to finish second. Second is only marginally better than third, because it means you get to go through, but it means you get a tougher draw in the next round. So, but with Group H being the way it is, no one team is really dominating. No one team has shown that they're gonna go all the way. Colombia have shown elements of what they are, and like I say, Senegal have been exciting. Japan have been surprising. So, whoever England and Belgium play, they're probably going to feel pretty confident. So the World Cup is fun, and I'm enjoying it. And I want to clap my hands, but it might not sound too nice. But no, I'm very excited.
Yeah, I am definitely excited for England versus Belgium, because it's the team that I should be supporting against the team that I actually support. So that I find really, because it's England. I don't expect England to do well, but I do expect Belgium to do well. So I'm kind of, I want to see them. Really, I want to see them both win, but we will see what happens.
Well, it'd be amazing if, cause with that expectation that is on Belgium, and maybe that sort of that subtle expectation that is growing in towards the England squad. Whoever comes out of that on top, or whether it's a draw, that will say a lot about the true nature of these squads, because they both have easier. The first two games are both the easier ties of the three. So this is the first time either team has had to play a real strong team in this tournament so far. So it could tell us a lot about the chances and the real strengths of these two teams.
Well, that seems like a perfect place to finish up this episode. Thank you, Dave, for your expert insight as always.
Oh, well, you're welcome, but I wouldn't go that far.
No, you never. You're too humble. Like Mo Salah, you are too humble. If I throw you a T-shirt, an Egypt shirt, I'm sure you would sign it and be very confused. But thank you for joining us on this episode of Who Watches the World Cup. Please, again, this tournament is quite short. We're almost at the end of the group stages. Then we have the knockout, the quarters, the semi-finals, the actual finals. It's all going to be over in a matter of a couple of weeks. So we really want as many people to listen in the next 3 weeks as possible. So share it to anyone that you can. And thank you very much for listening. And we will see you next time.
Toodaloo. And we're rolling, recording.
All right. Rolling. Now, I know what you're like, Steve, with this editing. I do not want that at the end of the podcast.
I do.
I really need to go to the toilet. I say right now. So 45 minutes. Remind me 45 minutes so I can tell Steve I need to go to the toilet right now. But I'll be right back.
Bye. Do you think it's number 1 or number 2? Baby, I'm a bad man.